is to the agenda. Nothing online. Seeing and hearing none. Go ahead and approve the agenda. Excellent. And then we'll move on to the approval of minutes. Make it a motion to approve. Julie motions to approve. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, take a moment to look over the minutes. Good job. Any discussion on the minutes? I think whoever wrote them, right, he did a great job. Thank you so much. Any changes? Commissioner, online? No changes? No. All right, being and hearing none, we'll go ahead and approve the minutes from our last meeting. Thank you, everybody. And we move on to action items. Number one, review and potentially approve or at least discuss a resolution in regard to the municipal safe parking project. So I drafted this as a starting point for conversation. This isn't necessarily what it needs to be, but someone needs to put pen to paper. So that's what it is. So, Mr. Sager, thank you so much for taking some time to put some comments on there. What's the order of business here, Jed? Would someone have to say?
You'll need a motion and second to approve the resolution, and then you'll discuss it.
And as chair, I can't make that.
Yeah, so you'll need someone else to.
So.
So may I make that motion
Yeah,
for us to approve and then discuss?
we need a second.
Yeah.
Second. I can sort of go, how do the commission want to do this? I can sort of go through and talk about my my reasoning behind each whereas, and in that I can address some of your comments, Daniel. But does that sound okay for everyone? So I'll just sort of read through it and sort of talk about where it came from. So whereas the Anchorage community has experienced a large number of authorized encampments, including vehicle encampments in recent years, I think that's evident. We've all sort of seen that. Whereas unmanaged encampments often grow large and ultimately become unsafe for the users of these camps, neighborhoods where the existing Anchorage community. Daniel, you'd mentioned, had there ever been large unmanaged, non-sanctioned camps that were actually deemed safe? We've never had any sanctioned camps officially.
Even the ones in the 3rd Avenue, and then the couple years ago, the one over that one campground or
Centennial Campground.
Centennial, yeah.
My recollection at that time that Centennial Campground was not an official homelessness response. Was the language out of the mayor's office at that point, and then the 3rd Avenue encampment was not, like, none of them have been sanctioned. There's been outreach and there's been services provided at some locations just because of the need. Certain people, but none of them have, the municipality has never said you can camp
So they just kind of like started and grew and then it just,
Exactly.
everything else came after
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, ooh, does that address what you were commenting on?
Yeah, I was just
Okay.
curious about that, yeah.
Whereas providing a safe and well-managed space for people to park and sleep is a piece of providing support to and stability to a specific subpopulation of people experiencing concern for unsheltered homelessness in Anchorage. So recognizing that safe parking is one piece of the puzzle, there's shelter, permanent supportive housing, all of the different things. But safe parking is one piece of it, whereas providing clear direction on where people can legally park will reduce unauthorized parking and the associated neighborhood impacts. Tell people where to go. Generally, they will go there. Whereas individuals who must sleep in their vehicles still need a place to exist during the day. Where do they exist now? They're existing in public spaces, places where you may not be allowed to park, and that sort of speaks to kind of the second be it resolved about asking the municipality to do it 24 hours. If you close it during the day, people don't disappear. They still need a place to go. Whereas typically designated parking in the lower 48 is something that's offered 24/7 in year round. You mentioned that you don't see the relevance there. I'll just say it's been brought up a number of times in conversations around safe parking that it's as a municipality, we are looking at doing this because this is something that's done and is successful in other locations. In other places in the lower 48, I don't mind striking that if we haven't.
Yeah, no, I see where you're going with it.
But it's we're holding up other communities saying, look at how well they're doing, or we're adopting something that's being done elsewhere. But we've also mentioned that where it's being done elsewhere, it's done 24 hours a day. We've said that we don't do it year round because it's not safe to sleep in your car in the winter time, which is understandable, but this is my understanding, this is a pilot project that would just be a couple of months. So
Dave, there was another comment from Daniel that I forgot to include in this packet that I'm just realizing now. You had a question about the budget specifically related to 24 hours. The comment that the,
Oh, yeah, it was essentially, and we can get to that.
okay, sorry.
But yeah, thank you.
Whereas opening designated parking each night could incentivize people to line up for a spot, potentially increasing neighborhood impact during the times when the space is unstaffed. So if people need to leave during the day and then come back at a specific time. We've seen this at shelter in the past, where if we close during the day, people will come back at a certain time and start getting in line or trying to get, like, just because we open it at say 5, people generally start showing up at 3:30, and that could contribute to neighborhood impact as people are waiting to get in. Whereas as a community, we have learned historic lessons on Third Avenue and other locations that 24-hour services create more stability for clients, cause less negative impact on the neighborhood. That's something, I personally experienced working down on Third Ave for a very, very long time. We talked to the Fairview Community Council, about this as well, providing 24 hours services and a place for people to be definitely reduces neighborhood impact. We also recognize that a lot of the people that are going to be accessing these services may not work banker's hours. It's people that are servers or dishwashers or house cleaners, people that might be working overnight. Their jobs may necessitate them to be there in the evening or overnight or something like that. So they'll need a place to be during the day. Therefore, be it resolved, the HAND Commission is supportive of a safe and well-managed designated parking. So as the commission, we support designated parking as a concept, but further be it resolved that we encourage the municipality to not close designated parking during the day and operate it on a 24-hour basis. That, friends, is what I drafted. Now let's pick it apart.
Very official.
We are an official commission.
I can give some insight on the issue with the concern of people lining up early.
Mhm.
So designated parking is gonna be a permanent type deal, so if somebody wanted to utilize it, they would turn in essentially an application and all the supporting documents, and then they're given a permit, and they have to have that permit visible to go into the space, so we'll just use our parking lot, for example, if we were gonna use the HHAND parking lot at the designated space, you would have to have a permit to get into that space. So if somebody didn't have a permit, they wouldn't be able to come and park there. So somebody wouldn't necessarily lose a spot just because they left during the day.
But if I have, thank you, but if I work nights, right, or I don't necessarily have a place to go during the day. And this parking lot here is designated parking, I'm probably just gonna park down on the park strip and wait for you.
Potentially,
You know, or, and I think I see that causing some challenges in the neighborhood, depending on where it is, maybe I will be in the target part, you know, don't really know. what
They have
it's about.
locations set up for where they were talking about using for the parking lots. I know that there was a zoning thing that they had, like some that they had kind of.
there are specific zones that we can look at. But we don't have a specific location set yet. The RFP was written so it could be just a vendor, a location, just a location. So there's a couple of spots that they've looked at as possibilities, but nothing's been decided yet.
Is it, okay, so.
This is probably why I want to check. We looked at all municipal right of ways as well as PLI and B3 locations. So I just want to be really clear that we didn't just have like a very exclusive list. We looked at locations all over April. And one of the benefits about our proposal is that a bidder has the ability to bring forward a location as well. Our goal was to ensure that if we had proposals that did not include a location, that we were ready to pivot with already having reviewed what was available across the state.
Brenda, you're a little bit garbled there. Did you guys,
What was the third, sorry, Farina, what was the third category? You said right of way, PLI, B3?
I mean, B3,
B3, yeah.
but no specific locations been identified.
Specific location.
But I would imagine, and you probably can't confirm this, but responsive bidders are probably, or at least have the option to say, I have a location.
People can bid on just a location.
You could bid on a location, services, or a combination of the two.
The bid closed today. Because originally, we got 3 questions submitted in writing, so we had to respond and we had to post that, and so it was supposed to close today.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we don't get that far till after.
I would also add as a whereas, and I forgot to, because Jessica, you had a point about vehicle operations during the day for people that are already struggling financially.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's a whereas or if it's part of the resolution itself of not closed during the day, operate designated parking. So two kind of pieces I wanted to toss in here. The first being that there's a lot of financial barriers to having a vehicle that is insured and registered. And while there could be financial resources to help someone get that, that's really difficult if they're not in the same place every night. And most people who are car camping right now are moving from location to location because they don't want to get another ticket or whatever. So one encouragement I would have was that there would be like a grace period where someone who qualified in all ways except for having insurance and registration, that maybe there could be something in place where they had, 5 business days to get that. And then if there were financial resources, organizations, individuals who wanted to be able to say, I'm able to give funding to help people with that, shallow subsidy, flexible funds, Lutheran Social Services does a lot of that. It would give them that opportunity to connect and get that and become compliant. I think about how a lot of the shelters, and this might resonate with Dave, so shelters that accept pregnant women. Most shelters that accept pregnant women will accept you and give you a period of time to show like the proof of the pregnancy or how far along you are, rather than say you have to go while you are unsheltered or while you're in this unstable place, go navigate all of these places to get that paperwork. You know, like they let them get that sense of stability to be able to make the doctor's appointment, to get the cab voucher to go do it. So similar to that, I think that would be an encouragement I would have. And then just in support of the 24-hour basis, just today, this morning, I had 2 people come to my office and I did a coordinated entry assessment with them. Both of them are sleeping in vehicles right now, moving from place to place. I brought this up. I said, if this were open, would this be a resource you'd be interested in? Both of them work nights. And as soon as I told them it would be closing, and, you know, it was only open from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m., they said, oh, well, that wouldn't work for me. They work a shift that is midnight to 8 a.m. So just throwing that out there, there are a lot of people who work at nights. And so I don't know if there's a way to have it be maybe shift based, that there's a certain number during the day, certain number at night. I would really encourage 24-hour operations that people can stay at, but if not, if there's a way to have day and night locations, I think that would be something that would fill the need a little bit better. So it was interesting. I haven't talked to anyone who was car camping in, well, I've been gone for 2 weeks, but in a while, and had 2 people today and both of them work night shift.
I think this is great. I appreciate your work on this. Whereas the one, I think someone else brought it up, whereas people line up, my understanding is you need to get a permit and only permitted individuals can park in those spaces. And to your point, Jessica, where do those people that, you know, can't get a permit or don't have, you know, I realized talking to Farina that I don't know if it's a funding challenge. We're doing this pilot. I support the pilot. If funding allows, it would be great for this to be 24/7. And if there are places that don't violate municipal laws, it would be great if people didn't have insurance or registration, if they would be given a grace period to get that. And other places could be designated for individuals that just need a little bit more support. But overall, I think this is fantastic.
That's a liability thing, assuming meeting everything people.
Yeah, we can't basically condone them not following the code. So it's-
And that's regardless of this, if it's a pilot or.
Yeah.
Here's, so it's kind of.
And I will say this, like we go on record with a resolution surrounding this today. It may or may not have an effect on the current designated parking plan that's going out right now. However, it is looked at as a pilot, and there is a hope to potentially do it next summer. So even if we don't get these recommendations through in what's going to happen, open up this, you know, August or July or whenever it's going to happen, it would be good for us to be on record. So when the municipality looks at this again for next summer, some of these recommendations are on record, and then maybe they would have a little bit of time to work out some of those legal tightrope stuff, you know, with that, or the next RFP is a nighttime and the daytime one and stuff. So I would just say to the commissioner, like, even if this doesn't have an effect on what's happening right now, it's really future focus.
And I think a question about that liability I might have then. So, but if the site were not a municipal site, so let's say a church came forward and bid on this proposal and said, we want to use our parking lot to do this. Would that still come into play? Because now we're talking about private property that.
I think so, Farina, you know, I want to say yes, because it's somebody who'd be contracting with municipality, but I'm gonna have to defer to Farina.
Because it's a municipally sponsored, because they take any muni funds, we would. have
Hold
to-
on, Farina, we can't hear you.
Hang on, we can't hear you.
Let's try that. Is that any better?
Can you try talking again? Yeah.
Uh,
Was that a yes or a no?
That is better.
Okay, so Lila is correct because it's a municipally sponsored contract. We would have to adhere to all of those requirements, even if it were on the church. And I appreciate everyone's feedback on this, and David is spot on with, even if there are elements that you're putting forward in the current resolution that we can't implement now because we are at the point where we've completed the RFP. This is a pilot, so it gives us that ability to say, this is what the community would like to see. This is the feedback from our commissioners. So very grateful for the dialogue. We did just want to close the loop. Even if it's on private property, they would still have to meet those requirements. And I'm pulling up the original AO right now because I believe some of that is also written in, and I'll just pop it into the chat.
Thank you.
I was in and also with the 24/7 and the idea, we had a family at our church parking lot in Camp Earth. And then the dad would work at night, but the kids and the mom stayed. And it was problematic because we weren't set up to do that, but there is also families that might be with that 24/7. And just a learning thing with in our backyard and partners. We had a grace period for someone to get their insurance. Turns out they had bought a stolen car. So then that stolen car got stolen back, which was
Yeah.
Stolen back.
by someone who, it's a long story. I won't get all into it.
Returned.
Yes, so it was not a good situation, and I learned that we couldn't have a case period because that's what we were working on with case management to get the next steps in that little window. Interesting things. And the other night, even with non-state manager, so yes.
So from a procedural standpoint, Jed, if we wanted to make amendments, we have a motion on the floor to approve. And
Yeah.
then we could make maybe I do.
Subsidiary.
A subsidiary or friendly amendment? How would we say, I want to have this whereas, I want to take this whereas out, I want to.
Well, so I think it depends on who makes that. So like the original mover can amend their original, can like move to amend their original motion. If the second agrees, then that becomes the new motion. If someone else wants to amend it, they can just make a new subsidiary motion.
So now that we're in discussion,
Yeah.
someone could
Good.
say, I make a motion to add X,
And then
Y,
you-
and Z. We vote on that,
vote on
and
that,
then we
and then
go
vote
back to the original
the
motion
original.
and vote on that as amended.
Right, but if the original mover just wants to amend something that could change the motion.
And that's kind of the.
Yeah. So it's really up
least
to you,
amount of
yes.
steps. But we would have to feed that information to the original.
Yeah, so and you know, since you're voting to approve this specific resolution, any amendments you make would have to be very specific about what the wording is that you're changing. Whether that's the original mover or someone else, you just have to be very clear about exactly what the literal language is that you're changing.
So I'd ask, does anyone want to change words or add words or take words out? I like the thought about the grace period. But.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see the grace period. Yeah.
The language I would propose if someone were to make that would be to just add a comma at the end of 24-hour basis and say, and allow for a reasonable grace period to come into compliance for a permit. And then that way, whatever the permit regulations were, you've left it vague enough that it's compliance with whatever the permit requirements are. And reasonable grace period, I think, makes it to where it's not dictating a certain time or date, but
Now,
Allows-
reasonable grace period to
I'm in compliance.
come
come
into
into
compliance
compliance. Okay.
with a permit or permit compliance. Let's see how the other whereas was worded. Or no, it wasn't in the whereas,
Yeah.
it's in her note here.
Okay, so as the mover that amends the original motion, I think Julie was the second, so do you approve that? And then, okay, so then that's the wording that you're
Be
voting on.
voting on the, it as amended.
I'll catch Karina's comment.
The AO itself doesn't explicitly require valid insurance, driver's license, or vehicle registration. These requirements were operationalized in the permit
Okay.
requirement.
So it could be open to.
Sorry, can I catch the end of that wording again specific? So it's at the end of a 24-hour basis.
And allow for a reasonable grace period to come into compliance with the permit.
For permitting or with the permit?
Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's what I have written down, to come
Got it,
into
thank you.
compliance with the permit. Yeah.
Any other language? Changes? Additions, subtractions, thought?
Based on Farina's comments, I mean, do we want another whereas the permit process has it, or that's covered, I guess, in the grace period?
I think that's covered in that, yeah.
I guess my only other question is, with this permitting process, do we think there's gonna be people lining up that don't have a permit that is wanting a parking spot or?
I think human nature dictates.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even if I do have a permit, I'm waiting for it to open.
Yeah.
You know, I got off of work at 1.
Okay.
Where am I gonna go between 1 PM and 6? I'm gonna park somewhere close because I don't want to use a lot of gas.
And not to bring up any PTSD, but we've seen that when we had shelters that work 24 hours, that there would often be people who just hung out there the
Yeah.
entire time it was closed.
Yeah.
And they walked 1 block away and sat there and
Came back when it opened, okay,
Back when it opened.
perfect.
so I think we would see that with vehicles as well, especially if you have limited gas, you would drive a block away.
Yep.
and
I'll
then-
tell you, the surrounding neighborhood really doesn't like that. So people go out to the neighborhood and. You know. Any other thoughts, changes before what I call a vote?
And yeah, if you don't have any further discussion, you can just call for a vote.
Seeing and hearing none. I would. Say, I would ask for. But.
And that's for unanimous consent.
Yeah, I ask for unanimous consent to approve. And resolution 2025-01 as amended. Any opposition? None.
Great job.
Guys, we did some business. We have something to put for annual report for next year.
We just ran the O line.
With all our notes all over it.
And Frank, you have all the language and everything, you'll route it for DocuSign.
You have the PDF version. If you send me the Word version, I can add that and then route it for DocuSign first. If you'd like.
I have a Word version.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, I will do that.
So I guess one question I didn't ask, and maybe I missed it in the turning off of my phone and walking in, who are we addressing this to? Is this to the like administration, to the assembly, to,
Assembly, I
Okay.
believe.
Yeah, I mean, you're an advisory commission to both the assembly and administration, so I think a resolution like this would kind of be delivered to both.
to both of them?
Excellent.
Hello.
Everything's ready now.
Oh,
Changed it up a little bit on you. Sorry about that.
Welcome. Thank you for being here, wherever you want. Okay, moving on to the next item, review and approve resolution regarding the municipal 10,000 homes in 10 years initiative. Do we have a a resolution to look at? Or we still waiting on it?
I haven't seen it yet.
We haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, I put that on there, just in case you had it, and I couldn't get a hold of you, or I had communicated that with you, but if you don't have it ready, you can
Yeah.
put that on. Okay.
That's it. Next month. Cool.
Okay, so yeah, I think someone will need to move to postpone that for the next meeting.
So we'll table this till the next agenda.
Second.
Any opposition? Seeing, hearing none, we will punt it to next. Yeah, we're ripping with this, did a great job, everybody. Informational items, ongoing business update from the special assistant, to the mayor for health and homelessness. It's Rita Brown.
Well, hello. All right. I just want to say thank you for passing the resolution for designated parking. Super jazzed. Your first resolution was my project. And so thank you. All right. So now back to our business. So first, I want to let everyone know that the RFP for designated parking closed today at noon. We are now waiting for purchasing to review all of the proposals that came in. Fingers crossed that I'm making a true statement when I say all of the proposals, that there were actually proposals that were submitted and are responsive. And so I'm pretty excited about that. I don't anticipate with the holiday actually having that information back until Monday. So I will keep everyone updated on where we are, but the proposals were due today at noon. The RFP for construction of the micro unit was open, and we had our pre-proposal conference on June 27th at 10 a.m. The proposals are due July 21st by 4 p.m. So we are really trying to make sure that we are providing as many different outlets and touch points for folks that are experiencing homelessness through just a series of different tools. One being designated parking. I think you've heard us talk ad nauseum about designated parking as well as the micro units. So it's just really, it feels good to be able to talk about and see these things moving forward. Really looking forward to your feedback once we get to a point where we can talk a little bit more in depthly about our micro unit. We are currently winding down our confidential negotiations for our scatter site congregate shelter. I will have more of an update on that next month, but we really are, again, just trying to adhere to all of the information that's been available throughout our strategy document. I would love to just point out that yesterday made 1 year for the LaFrance administration. So being able to be in front of you and talk about the items that were born in that August, October period when we developed the strategy document to 1 year later where we have actually implemented and are moving forward with what we committed to is a real moment of pride and an opportunity to have feedback and engagement from many of you in the multiple hats that you wear, from this role as being advisors to what we do, as well as with your professional hats for many of you that have been the service providers that are offering these services. And fingers crossed, gentle nudge, many of you that are interested in being service providers for these upcoming services. Just feels really good. As of June 30th, we didn't feel so great, but is necessity of being budget constrained. We did spin down our warming operation operated by Henning. So we did lose capacity for 45 individuals to have refuge. I would say warming has really presented itself as something that is important to have in our overall continuum. We found that we had a pretty interesting group of folks that utilized warming that weren't interested in shelter. Warming also provided kind of that first step for some folks to have engagement into the shelter system and other touch points with providers. I don't know what our winter season, this upcoming season looks like, because in our congregate scatter site model, we really have emphasized and we have a desire to have surge capacity. So warming is TBD, depending on how things move forward with our congregate negotiations. We currently have a total of 300 shelter beds available throughout the remainder of the summer. I highlight that because it is the first time that we've had this number of beds available in what we consider kind of our shoulder season outside of the emergency cold weather period. We continue to maintain 200 shelter beds at East 56th Avenue, and we have 100 shelter beds at the Alex operated by Match. Feels much more comfortable to genuinely have a place to direct individuals to through our community operated system, as well as our partner shelter providers from Brother Francis to Gospel Rescue Mission. I share that with this group that as we move into the summer, there's been lots of conversation, and I know this is later on the agenda that we'll talk about, but the AOs around illegal camping. I want everyone to keep in the forefront of your mind that this is one of the few times that the municipality has made this many beds available. And so while we know that more is needed, I don't want us to lose sight of that there are access points for individuals. I believe many of you were likely tracking that we did abate at Davis Park and the snow dump. If you watched online or read any of the newspapers, there was definitely a bit of dramatic flare with some of the fires that were set as we were abating. Despite what the news coverage may have looked like, I think many of you are fully aware that when you go into an abatement situation, most people are sitting ready, packed, ready to go, high-fiving you when you come in. That's just typically not the way an abatement goes. It's critically important that we have outreach in advance of an abatement. With Davis and the snow dump, we had just over about 30 days of intensive outreach, connecting people to services. On the day of abatement, we had 25 individuals access shelter, which is really good. I know I'm preaching to the choir. Typically, things don't get real for some folks until you're right there. And we saw that with having 25 individuals accept shelter on the day of abatement. For the Mountain View community, it meant a lot for the administration to listen, hear, and take action on what we heard loud and clear was a community that felt overlooked. And the fact that we were abating throughout the rest of Anchorage, we were tacitly directing people to Mountain View. Since that time, we continue to have outreach engaging. APD continues to have a patrol directing people to shelter. It was not for much of our community what they would like to see, as many people were very comfortable with having the largest and most longstanding and entrenched encampments in the Mountain View area. But the commitment was made that none of our communities should host their unhoused neighbors for that extended period of time. When an encampment is allowed to exist for so long, it becomes incredibly dangerous. The people that are in the encampments tend to be victimized quite often, as well as the spillover effect for the overall community. I know that there are many mixed feelings around abatement. I share this because as a part of the administration's plan, it has always been shelter supports, enforcement, and abatement. We are not deviating from that model. That will be ongoing. I believe as you all have conversation about the AO, it's understanding that our current abatement protocol and process follows municipal code, where we're able to provide a notice period before individuals are moved from the area. We most often use a 10-day notice of abatement. We have the ability to use 72 hours or 24 hours, which we are rarely ever enforce those unless there are exigent circumstances. With the upcoming AO that you'll discuss, this would make camping illegal and the ability for the police to move people along with immediate trespass. And just understanding that there's a little bit there's quite a bit of a difference in the runway that the abatement process allows individuals and outreach and other partners to engage versus what happens in a real time. You must move along as you are considering and thinking about the impacts of the data. As we move through summer, you will see a second request for a proposal that we'll be looking for an operator once we have a contractor set for our micro units. We'll continue to partner with the health department as you get a quick update from Jed on the action plan. That has really been a great partnership between the administration and the health department and aligning priorities to ensure that we're really able to move people with all of our funding in supporting homelessness, housing, and all of our support services through a variety of different pathways in ways that we're able to create some synergy between different funding schemes. As you all, some of you with some of your existing contracts know that you might have pots of money from two different sources. The ability to have these conversations, to have a partnership, and to have a guiding document and how we move forward ensures that we have that continuum of care, that we have partners that are strengthening the system, and that we are able to speak to and utilize funding in a way that's coordinated. I will pause there, given that Jed has a lot of information. I hope that was helpful. I'm available for questions.
I have a question. Farina, this is Shanae. I have a question. Do you have any idea how many persons were abated? How many persons were living in Davis?
That's a great question. The number of individuals living in Davis is incredibly hard to ascertain because it is such a fluid nature of the foot traffic versus the actual number of individuals that live in Davis Park. I can tell you what I saw on the day of abatement. On the Davis Park side of the house, I counted 30 individuals. That was just Farina in real time, the number of individuals that I could see that were packing up, those that were there that identified they live there and requesting actual outreach. The number of individuals on the snow dump side, again, hard to say because we have a lot of people that did move along. And so it's hard to have a count. We've consistently had outreach going out to support the folks and pop-up events for outreach for probably the last 6 months, if not a little bit longer. And I can follow back up with you, Shanae, as I reach out to our coalition partners to see if they have a hard count. But I know that this is something that we bounce back and forth on is based on just the fluid nature of the individuals that would be in Davis Park, but are not necessarily living in Davis Park. And the snow dump. So please know if I say Davis Park, I mean Davis Park as well as the snow dump.
Thank you.
Rena, those 300 beds, how many of those are open or are those all full?
Oh, can you please say that again?
The 300 beds that you mentioned in the beginning, there was like 100, or how many of those are open or are they all spoken for?
So on any given day,
I was gonna say.
we have bed turnover. So of the 300 beds, we normally maintain 100% capacity. That tends to be a misnomer when you go online and you look at our shelter dashboard, it always shows 100%. But we typically see anywhere from 4 to 6 beds a day between our congregate and non-congregate shelter system that turns over. We've had days where it's been upwards of 13 beds available at our congregate site and maybe 6 beds at each of our shelter sites. It just depends on what the turnover for the day looks like. But at bed count, which is kind of hard to say, which is typically 11 o'clock, we normally have every single bed full.
I can tell you that as of 1 PM, we had 8 out of those 300.
Okay.
Available. Yes, Dave probably has a more recent number than one PM.
I could look at that data, but I couldn't tell you. But I am sending out the shelter occupancy dashboard to the commissioners.
And that dashboard is as of 10 PM every night, so it updates. There's a robocall that goes out in each shelter. It types in how many beds they have filled.
So that's on
The
ESO
opposite.
website?
Yeah.
Okay.
We just have, for coordinating outreach, we have a gigantic text chain that I promise you want nothing, no part of. But we get regular updates of how many beds are open at each shelter. So my last update was at 1 PM and it was 8.
Got it.
But yeah, Farina's right. We typically see, I would say between 5 and 15 across the two sites on any given day. And remember that the congregate site is open to walk-ups, so it changes often as people
Sure.
come in, so.
Other questions? None? Great. Thank you, Farina. Thorough and informative as always. Welcome. You see, we got one person in the room and then I believe it's got 2 people online, I believe an AK and a phone number, and just want to make sure we have space for public comment at the end. So are you here for public comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
Alan Kemplin, I'm assuming.
Of course it's Alan. Hi, Alan. Are you here for public comment?
Hello, I'm here to listen to all the wisdom that's been shared.
That's very kind. Okay, just want to make sure we have space for you. So no comment from.
And there was one more question online.
That's
Wait,
Kimberly.
We'll.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the phone's all over.
They're cute. So moving on to JED, Community Safety and Development 2025 Action Plan.
You? Okay, well, thanks, everybody. Yeah, I just asked to be on the agenda for today because we do have our 2025 action plan in progress. It's going before the assembly on July 15th. And typically we do bring this to the HAND Commission at some point in the process of getting it approved, so that we get whatever feedback you guys have. So I'm Jed Rolay, Community Systems Program Manager, Anchorage Health Department. I think most of you know me. And I just want to give a brief overview of kind of how the planning process works for our HUD funding, where the action plan fits into that, and kind of where we are in that process right now. We do 3 documents that we're required to do as a condition of getting our entitlement funding from HUD. That's the 5-year consolidated plan, which is sort of our big picture strategic plan of how we want to use our funding. Then every year we do an annual action plan that lays out the specific projects that we intend to fund with that funding. And then each year we do a consolidated annual performance and evaluation report, or CAPER, which reports back to HUD on how we've done with the funding that we got each year toward addressing the goals that we've identified. We have 3 main programs that are covered by our con plan and this planning process, and then 1 additional that we sometimes have. This is Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. This is our largest and best known program. Funds a wide variety of projects and programs throughout the city. We have our Home Investment Partnerships Program. This is capitalized as if it's an acronym, but it's actually just the word home. That's more focused on housing specifically. We have our Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, that's focused primarily on immediate relief of homelessness or potential homelessness. And then sometimes we get National Housing Trust Fund funding as a sub-grant from the state of Alaska. We haven't done that in the past few years, but we are angling to try to get that in. Convince the state to give us. Funding amounts that we get, this is just the past 5 years, what we've gotten, including our allocation for 2025. You can see we typically get a little less than $2 million in CDBG, about 600 or 700,000 in home, and about 160,000 ESG. Fluctuates a little bit, but it's been pretty consistent the last few years. So goals, our con plan process that we do every 5 years lays out our goals. We are thinking that we will probably do an amendment to our con plan in the next few months to kind of specify our goals a little more clearly than what we have in the current version, which was adopted in 2023, but really had continued forward what we had done in the past couple iterations. So those goals were really probably about 10 and 15 years old now, probably due for refresh. Priority needs identified there, pretty straightforward: homeless populations, low income and housed populations, public facilities and public services. These are kind of the broad areas where we're trying to address issues within the city with our funding. And then the goals are a little bit more specific of what the kind of means that we're intending to use to meet those priority needs: rental housing development, homeowner rehabilitation, mobile home repair, homeowner development programs, new development of homeowner owned housing, public facilities, public services. And then there's a series of these, and these are the things that I think we might take out off the goal list, because these are really more projects than goals. But currently in there, tenant-based rental assistance, the housing development organization, operating expense assistance, economic development, homeless prevention. So those are our goals. So what we're trying to do is address those priority needs and those goals. Here's just a little bit about the spending and what we've actually done with our funding in the past few years. It can be a little bit hard to see at this level. Like, I'll send out this presentation after the meeting so people can look a little more closely. This is CDBG funding each year of the past 5 years by category. That gray is affordable housing, yellow is public facilities, blue is public services, and green is admin other. You can see it fluctuates a bit year to year. This is based on our draws from HUD. Our grants are on a reimbursement basis, so there can be a lag between when we actually spend money and when we draw the funding and get reimbursed from HUD. That's part of the reason it goes up and down. It also goes up and down. There was a big influx of COVID-related funding in the 2021, 2022 period that's mostly over with now. So that also accounts for that spike there. You can see kind of the balance of types of programs we do. Sometimes a lot of housing, sometimes more on the public facility or public service. For home, this one's even more kind of up and down. Some years we have not drawn any funding at all. Didn't necessarily mean we didn't spend any, we just might not have been reimbursed until the next year. Categories there, that orange is affordable home ownership, yellow is rental housing development, green is tenant-based rental assistance. These are vouchers similar to the Section 8 program, although it's a separate program that we do sometimes. And then that kind of brownish is the admin category for home. ESG, this is one where there's usually a pretty small program, but during COVID, there was a big influx of funding. So we did a lot of additional projects that we don't usually do with this funding. Green, there's homeless prevention. Blue is rapid rehousing. Yellow is emergency shelter. And there's a dark green, I think just on the 2020, that's homeless outreach. Having some issues with our closeout in sort of identifying what funding was spent on that particular working on that. It's not something we usually do with ESG funding. And then the admin/other is that dark blue at the top. So talked about this a couple times before, but we're moving toward a process where we allocate most of our funding through competitive requests for grant proposals. We kind of kicked that off this year. It's a more formal, transparent process for selecting projects than what we've often done in the past. It's not required by HUD, but it is encouraged to do a competitive process for awarding funds. Many cities do this. We have done it in the past. We are kind of moving back toward doing that. Future, starting in 2025, this is going to be the main way that we do allocations. So we'll be putting out a series of these for the various pots of funding that we have available. Ideally, before we draft the action plan. Didn't quite get all of them out before the 2025 action plan, so we do have some TBD that we'll be doing RFGPs for in coming months for 2025, but generally we're going to So strategic direction for this is to do fewer but larger projects. We don't have a whole lot of funding relative to the scale of the problems we're working on. You could see how broad those goals were. And then the pots of money we have, it totals about $3 million or so per year. Not a whole lot in the context of the problem. So we're looking toward kind of leveraging other funds, targeting the biggest community needs, which generally are housing supply and supportive services. Those are the two big things we consistently hear that we need more of. Not the only needs, there's also shelter capacity and other things that public facilities, there's other things that as well, but housing and services are the main things that we are trying to target, and we've been coordinating very closely with the mayor's office in recent months on aligning this with their goals, both on the housing side of the 10,000 Homes Initiative, as well as with the strategic plan for homelessness health. So for 2025, we put out an RFGP for a CDBG housing / shelter acquisition, kept this a little general in terms of what types of projects we would consider, because this is a new way of allocating funds that we're doing now. We did select a grantee, that's True North Recovery, for a $750,000 project that's acquisition of a hotel for conversion to recovery residences. It's a model that True North Recovery has pioneered in the Valley and expanded into Fairbanks. They're now looking to expand into Anchorage, and so this is a partnership that we've entered into with them. They applied, went through a scoring process, and they were selected as the recommended grantee for that. So a specific project will be included in the final action plan submission to HUD. And for the first time in quite a while, we won't have to amend plan to identify a specific grantee because we've already did it. In future years, we'll be planning to put out our housing acquisition / capital RFGP. We've kind of been framing it as acquisition, although it could also be something like modular construction, like the micro units or the In Our Backyard project that have pioneered lower cost ways of doing construction. Generally, we've been thinking this in terms of like either acquiring hotels for conversions or doing kind of lower cost capital projects like that. Putting out an RFGP for public services. We haven't gotten to that one yet this year, so that one is still mostly a TBD and an action plan. And then other buckets of funding that we have maybe additional RFGPs depending on what our types of projects we decide we want to prioritize. RFGPs will go out before the beginning of the program year, which is for us is a calendar year. So ideally, these would go out actually the fall before the year of the action plan. Didn't quite make that this year. We had to have in the spring, still ahead of where we've been past. And then the annual action plan process for allocate grant funding. So here's the proposed projects for 2025. And again, it might be a little hard to see, so you'll see this when we send out this proposed project list. Basically, we have an administrative portion for CDBG, mobile home repair program with Rural Cap that was a longstanding program that we've done for many years, continuing to fund that at $400,000. The acquisition project, True North Recovery, that's $750,000. There's some activity delivery costs for our costs of managing some of these projects. About $200,000 in public services TBD that we're expecting to go out as a competitive RFGP in the fall. And then there is one public service project that we fund every year, Sacred Place case management at a certain level, which is kind of a condition of the capital funding that we put in to that project when Rural Cap acquired what had been a hotel and converted that to permanent supportive housing a few years back at 700,000 or about 70,000. So for a total of just under $2 million. For home, this one's a little more TBD. We're planning on doing rental housing development, some sort of housing development with our community housing development organizations. We currently only have one of these and have had one in the past, but we are doing a push to get applications, get additional CHDOs or CHODOs as we call them. This is a designation by HUD for a particular type of housing development organization for which we set aside a certain amount of our funds each year. We're required to. Typically, we've just done those projects with Habitat for Humanity Anchorage, which is our one CHODO currently. But in the future, we'll hopefully have more and be able to do a more open competitive process among the CHODOs. Also planning to do some sort of tenant-based rental assistance project. We've done these in the past, kind of put a pause on that last year as we looked through the need for tenant-based rental assistance. I think what we found is that there is a great considerable need for that, found with our Treasury Department emergency rental assistance that we've been working on. Many more applications than they can fund. So we'll do some form of tenant-based rental assistance. And then some sort of rental housing development. We don't have a whole lot of money for that, so that might end up getting wrapped in with one of the other projects instead. That's a home projects. And then ESG smaller grant. We have typically done this through the homelessness prevention program at the Aging Disability Resource Center, which is a part of the Anchorage Health Department. And they manage a homelessness prevention program where people at risk of eviction can call it. And if they qualify for the program, can get coverage of their rental arrears and remain in their housing. So the timeline for the action plan, we'll kind of kick that off in winter of 2024 through spring. Got the public notice draft out in May. Did the public comment period and hearing May through June. It's on the assembly agenda for approval on July 15th. So that's kind of the point we're at right now. And then target submission is before August 16th. Every year, August 16th is our real drop dead deadline to get this into HUD, or we lose out on some of the funds. Past years, we've cut it very close. We are now much ahead of it, even though just about a month and a half left. That's well ahead of where we typically have been in the past few years. So we're getting ahead of it. Hopefully, in future years will be time, but that's where we're at. So we are required to do a 30-day comment period. This year, that was May 21st through June 20th. We did a public hearing at the library on May 29th. Chase gave a version of this presentation that was very good. We have that recorded on our website. Go and see that. Didn't get a lot of public comment from that, but we had one person show up. I will continue to, if other comments come in, we can address them if we have time to revise the draft. But the minimum 30 days is required by HUD, so that we can make sure we get some public comment. And then other consultations. So HAND Commission, we're at every one of these meetings and, eager to take feedback and ideas. ACH, the Coalition, the Theme of Care, we are in frequent contact with to get feedback from them on ideas. Community councils, social service agencies, finance corporations, state equivalent for our office, basically. And then any other interested organization. People have ideas about projects that might fit into this sphere. Definitely put them in touch with us. We're happy to meet with people and kind of get ideas and explain how our process works about applying for funds. So that's all I got. I got my contact info here, and I'll open up if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Jed.
Thank you.
I have a question, but I'm glad, I'm glad that this went out. This is now starting to go out as a competitive process. Glad to see that.
Yes, we are glad to see that as well. Appreciate that.
Mr. Kaplan, I see you have a question.
I do have a question, and the question is the process for getting included into the consolidated plan, language supporting allocation of HUD funds to CDBG for corridor revitalization. Just want to make we're actively now engaged in an effort to look at the Gamble Ingram corridor. And I think it's important for the consolidated plan to acknowledge the work that's being done and to craft the guiding HUD document such that if there's an opportunity that presents itself for the 2026 action plan, that we can do that. Is that possible? Can we?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Alan. Yes, I think the best way to do that would be to email the address that's up there, ahdcsdplans@anchorajk.gov, and put that in as a comment. We are past the official comment period, but we do still have time to incorporate comments, and those will be included in the final draft that goes to HUD. And then that'll be kind of on record, and we can have continuing discussions as we begin to formulate the 2026 plan.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. Moving on to new business. Discussion of the prohibited camping ordinance, AO 2025-74. That's one, you'll see in the packets. Frankie so kindly puts together for us, and we always forget to pick up together. There, I believe there's two versions.
Technically, there were three. There was the original one that McCormick put forward, and then Christopher Constant, put one forward as a revised, as an S version. No, no, I didn't include that one. I did not include that one because I'm relatively sure it was withdrawn, but if you would like me to send it to you, I can. It's included in the agenda packet for the regular assembly agenda meeting. If you have interest in that, I can send that to you another time, but what is here is the original one and then the S version that was put forth by the administration.
And then what's this AM 487 in 2025?
Whenever you have an AO or an AR, so whenever you have a memorandum or a resolution, whenever you have an ordinance or a resolution, an AM accompanies it.
Okay.
So it's just like context.
I call them the cover letters a lot. It's the cover letter. I know, which is weird.
So we don't have any action on this, but just this is a conversation around housing and this and neighborhood development. It's likely going to be in front of the assembly at some point soon. So I thought it would be good for us as commissioners to have a conversation about it. That is my whole preamble. We'll sort of open it up for discussions.
I'll just say, I think one challenge I really have with this, or two, but one challenge I really have is that there isn't anywhere for people to go. The shelters are full. And when we talk about there being 8 beds open, I can't say for certain, but I am fairly positive those 8 beds are open because somebody left the shelter and they're outside again.
Yeah.
Our percentage of exits to housing or a permanent destination are fairly small from our shelters. And it's not to say they're zero. They're not zero. But they're not as high as we would like them to be. So all this does, in my opinion, is create more barriers to housing for people, especially when we're talking about things that may take a while to actually prosecute. The only thing worse than a charge on your court view is an open charge on your court view. And so if these are things that sit open for a period of time, that is a huge red flag to a landlord, regardless of what the charge is. The other thing that it can do is it can kind of out people as experiencing homelessness if they have this particular charge on their record. And that might be something that creates a bias with a landlord as well, or an employer. So those are some challenges I have. I don't think there's other options. It would be, I still wouldn't support it as a person, but if there were sufficient shelter resources, I could see having a conversation about some type of measure, penalty measure being in place for people who are unsheltered. But I think without shelter capacity, this is a really hard conversation to be having, because what you're doing is essentially asking people, if you look at these maps, you're asking people to go to the little teeny tiny green splotches that exist on here that aren't part of all of these buffer zones. So the very northeast corner of Russian Jack Park, which is an off-leash dog park, but it's still green on here. Sections of like Campbell Creek Park, where you get just far enough away from the creek that you've got a little sliver of green area. Or we're pushing people to a posture of what's called rough sleeping, where you put your stuff in your backpack and you walk until you can't walk anymore, and then you lay down and sleep until somebody kicks you and says, get up. And then you get up and you walk some more until you can't walk anymore. So those are two challenges that I have with this.
I think we're not considering the complex care needs.
Not even in
Yeah.
the slightest
I feel
thinking about some
before
of
we
that.
can even think about this, there's a whole population not serving.
Well, I mean, I also think about the financial implications of this, the increased workload on the people trying to move others. And then if you do end up with a fine, you already don't have that money, right? This is another financial barrier that adds on to that, on top of all the things you just said. So I understand the heart and intent of this. And then I also know the reality of there's no other place for these persons to go.
Yeah, I would add that, you see ordinances like this are, not uncommon down in 48. Anchorage, Alaska, it's a little bit more unique that we're an island. It's sometimes the intention in some communities, but this is to make it very uncomfortable to camp in this community. And so it drives people to go to a different community. And if I can't camp in this community, I'm hop on a bus, I'm gonna travel and I'm gonna go to somewhere. That will be a little bit more receptive to that, but may not have this type of thing in it, where in Anchorage, that's not an option for people. People have heard me talk about this before, if you want to leave Anchorage, it's $800 to get to Seattle, and then what do you do, right? And so, I think there are some communities that are held up that we don't see camping in this community because of this ordinance, but sometimes we look at the communities around them, it sort of pushes the problem out onto, spaces around there, or the different communities. It doesn't necessarily solve the issues told, may solve camping issue, but that community is not no longer allowed in the community, but it doesn't solve the issue of getting that person connected to services. And in Anchorage, the thing I hear is that it's a very expensive and dramatic game of being, just moving people around.
Whack-a-mole.
Yeah, I don't understand, but that's essentially what, and it's a lot of APD resources, a lot of port resources, and it doesn't drive people. I mean, it may drive some people for services, but it's I think I like the S version better than the original version, because it's a little bit more nuanced. There's a provision in there for allowing these to be remediated in therapeutic courts. I think I saw that. So I like the recognition that it's a more nuanced issue. But it's tough to do something like this when your community is essentially an island. Other conversation.
So if they don't pass that, then they would just continue to do what they've been doing, which is also whack-a-mole.
That's a good point.
I have a very strange question, so bear with me. When we talk about camping, how are we defining that? And the reason I ask is I had a conversation with a friend the other day who had gotten off of work, had a stressful day, drove to a park, opened her car windows and went to sleep listening to the birds. And she was asking, if this goes forward, would I be ticketed for that? And so where is that line drawn, and is there a definition for camping? I don't know.
There's some language in here about hard sided, hard Anyway, there's like framing.
Yep.
Which I found interesting in the
Yeah,
S version.
building the structure.
Yeah,
I think it's permanent structure.
yeah.
But also correcting intent.
Yeah.
You know, all those.
And I think my short answer would be yes, and it's also illegal right now. And I think that's the other thing that's important to remember is that all this is doing is taking the existing code. Well, there's some other things in the mayor's S version, but it takes the existing code, which criminalizes camp or which prohibits camping and just puts a criminal element to it, that it's a criminal charge, not a civil, like a citation type charge. And I'm not sure that it's the deterrent people think it is. If you don't have anywhere to go and you don't have the money to pay the fine, you don't quite care.
We don't even know that there's a fine,
Yeah.
right? Like there's the awareness factor of it all too.
Yeah, I do have questions about enforcement, and I hope that at the assembly meeting, we get some answers on enforcement, like how that might work. Is there some kind, would there be some kind of grace period where, is it that you walk up on someone and say, we're within 100 feet of this school, go directly to jail type of thing? Or is it an educational aspect? Like, hey, you may not have realized this, but your encampment is within 100 feet of this school and it's not allowed to be right here, or it's a criminal charge. Can we move it?
Does it make any changes to the amount of time that is needed to notice for abatement? It's allowed for immediate abatement in these spaces.
If I remember correctly,
It would be misdemeanors. I don't think it's setting the guys in jail.
it's how was it? At one place it mentioned up to 6 months in jail. But I did see, there's a work session when?
Next week on the specialist.
I do also see a community need to prevent very large encampments from sprouting. So I think that we've discussed with this committee, like when they get very large, that's when they tend to become more dangerous. So I do want to recognize sort of the neighborhood and community need to have some rules to prevent 200 people from all camping in the same spot. And I think having some tools to allow the municipality to abate more rapidly might be necessary, but I don't know that they need to be. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not sure how they're connected, but I don't know that they need to be connected to criminal charges.
Yeah. And the current abatement code, so last year, I say we, but the municipality did amend the abatement code and added some levels of prioritization to abatement. And one of those is encampments that are more than 25. I believe they settled on structures, not people, but I can't remember. Either 25 people or 25 structures are a higher prioritization for abatement, in addition to the things that are highlighted in here within the buffer zone of a shelter, the buffer zone of a school, a childcare center, a protected waterway, and a paved trail. So those are all right now in our current abatement code, able to be prioritized above other abatements.
It's still a 10-day notice.
Yeah, and it the changes last year simplified the notices. There used to be, so Farina mentioned there's 3 different kinds of notices right now. There's a 24-hour, a 72, and a 10-day. There used to be a fourth one that was a 14-day, but the 10-day and the 14-day it was so nuanced in the differences between them. So they smushed them together and said it's all a 10-day.
How would commissioners feel about this particular ordinance from administration, if there was a place for people to like if there was a place for people to go.
Oh, I'd say if we have shelter capacity and if we, because where I come from is we're saying, no, you can't be here with one hand. We need to be saying, but we can be
Yeah.
here with another.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, and if we had shelter capacity, we had a place for people to go, then this is a much different conversation.
Right.
I agree.
I think that the issue, in my opinion, is unfortunately, all of those individuals do get grouped into one big group. Because there's a lot of them that are constantly breaking the law. And really putting a lot of pressure on a lot of other people that are doing that. So if there were a place to send these people, whatever that might look like, then it sounds like it wouldn't really be that controversial. of an
Yeah,
ordinance.
I think I would want to encourage and look at the nuance of what is available. Because right now there are 20 places. If we think about all of the beds that exist, there are 20 of them where you can have a pet with you. Like that's a real limiting factor for people who are unsheltered and have pets. There are only 100 of those spaces where you can be with your significant other in the same place.
Right.
So some of those, I would say we would want to make sure that our shelter capacity could meet all of those needs. The last one, which is something Darcy mentioned, there are a number of people who are unsheltered right now who can't perform their activities of daily living, which means they can't go to a shelter unless there is somebody who is providing that care for them. And even then it gets kind of iffy.
Boy, howdy does it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there are people who are medically vulnerable outside who don't have, a shelter doesn't exist for them to go
Such a
to.
paradox.
It's pretty wild. So I would want to make sure that we were, like, if that existed, that we were making sure we were talking about a place for everyone.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
the numbers are roughly living outside, roughly 300 to 400, 500, somewhere in there.
Over 500.
It's over 500.
I've been
So
gone for 2 weeks.
what would you say in a perfect world? Otherwise, when would we be able to have facilities realistically for that many people?
Ooh,
10 years?
yeah, like, I mean, if you're, boy, I don't know, like, shelter capacity is expensive. And,
Yeah.
housing's also expensive. If we're relying on our HUD funds alone, you're talking about like hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years.
Yeah, I mean, you'd really have to bring in a lot of other resources to build up the system to a level where we're at that place where you have sufficient capacity. And I mean, a lot of people are working on doing that, both in and outside the municipal government. But yeah, I mean, it's a really steep challenge, basically. There's not a lot of resources available and the scale of the problem is really huge. It is kind of the only answer is to build up that capacity,
Yeah.
I think, but it's just a big lift.
It makes sense to me, again, and I've talked with Thea and Farina about this. It makes sense to me for the municipality to have sanctioned camp areas. And like you guys can be here, there's gonna be services, people connect you with these things. It's gonna have patrols, it's gonna be safe, we'll have, 2 or 3 spread out around the municipality, but you have to be there. Like that is where you have to go. Because otherwise, we're gonna have hundreds of years of this same exact situation where people are really getting to the end of the rope with their compassion at this point. It's been pretty obvious to witness here lately with the things that are happening in the city and on the trails and the parks and around the schools. So.
And I think
The whole task force.
Yes, we did. And I think one so I listened to some of the testimony at the last assembly meeting too. I was 11 hours different, so it was kind of weird. It was over my coffee, not dinner. No, I was actually in Greece during that time, but in any case, listening to it, I was listening to a lot of the issues people had. And I think something I've realized, but didn't really come to the forefront until I heard that a lot of the complaints about things like theft and drug dealing and drug use, like those are crimes. Those are things that are criminally chargeable. So it's so that issue is an enforcement of the existing criminal laws on our books and not, we're not gonna solve that by creating more criminal laws that, as Alan mentions, are likely to not be enforced. Like, so I think the bigger challenge and the bigger conversation is how do we enforce the laws that are already on the books for some of those activities that are endangering everybody? They're endangering the people in the camps, they're endangering the neighborhoods, like those,
Yeah.
that just creates the unsafe space. So it's more about enforcement of our existing laws on the books and not creating more laws that probably won't address that issue.
Which seems like it'd be easier to enforce if you were able to put everybody in camping areas that were ran by the municipality and policed and cameras.
I want to do a quick time check. It is 5:28. As a reminder, I do need to lead at 5:30, so if you do want to review, I would hand the proverbial gavel to our vice chair. Over here, if we have more items on the agenda, I would, I know there's like a lot of discussion that we can have on this. I would like to keep this on the agenda for next month. I would invite any commissioners that feel strongly about the HAND Commission taking a stance to put pen to paper. And bring a resolution that we can discuss, and potentially vote on and go on record about this issue here. So, with that, I would entertain a motion to extend the meeting, knowing that I'm walking out of time.
And we have more items on the agenda. I would move to extend for 15 minutes.
Second,
Second.
So
any opposition? None? All right, and then I gotta go, so,
Yeah.
yeah, congratulations. Jessica, thank you so much. Sorry, I'm not here to. What's your name? Heather. Howard. Yes, okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Happy 4th.
Agenda item municipal micro units project. Is that a presentation?
I have a question for you.
Oh.
So are we in agreement that we're going to pick up the discussion of this item at the next meeting?
I think so. And knowing that there's an assembly meeting happening in the middle where this may or may not get voted on, it could also be postponed again. But was the micro unit?
Micro units, yeah, I mean, Theo's the kind of the lead on this. I don't know, Farina, if you want to talk about it, or I can talk about it.
Jen, you can go ahead and talk about it, but I think we would just want to postpone this until next month when Thea is here to do the presentation. Because we'll
Okay.
also have more information on where we are with the RFP.
Okay, yeah, we can just postpone that then.
So do we need to make a motion? I make a motion to table.
Yeah,
it
make a
till
motion to
next month?
table it to next month.
I'll second.
Any opposition? Right. General public comments. We're up.
If it's tabled till next month, do I still make?
Oh, yeah, you can talk about it now. You can come back next month.
Okay, how long do I have?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
So there's a few different things. I have a handout to give. Actually, I have two. And then I have a little speech. It doesn't go over everything, so I'm gonna kind of make it up as I go. Thank you for the warm welcome today. My name is Heather Tomakoff. I was at the public comment. Anyways, let's start with this. I'm here to propose a focused next step that helps Anchorage build on the outreach efforts it already has by formally organizing them into a coordinated global outreach system. This is something that is already happening informally across our community. But right now, what we're missing is structured shared data and long-term stability. The key pieces that make these efforts more efficient, more humane, and more effective. What I'm asking, well, it explains it all in this handout. What what I'm asking is for you guys to also consider the winter coming, people don't have any access to anything. How many years are we gonna continue having 50+ people die on the streets? We need to end it. We need to come together to find out something. People are dying. We have this is not a crazy idea, because if the ordinance wants to pass a $15 million tax that has no end cap date, this idea is not crazy. I really want you to consider something. There's no end cap date, and only people in Anchorage would pay that tax. Think about all the commuters that come into Anchorage, they wouldn't pay anything. So this is not only for the homeless, but it's for our community to come back together. It's an opportunity. What we need to do is figure out some way to mobilize teams, and it can be specialized by age groups. They can be coordinated municipally. It can be an age and needs specific mobile outreach team. And that's kind of what you guys were discussing already. So just coming together and really thinking about it, coordinating it piece by piece. It is overwhelming to think about how many people are on the streets. But like somebody had said earlier, we're not the lower 48. There's only X amount of people here on the streets, and it's the same people, same offenders, same crimes that aren't being criminalized, they aren't being charged, but we want to criminalize people sleeping on the street because they have nowhere to go. But there's nothing available to them. Where's all these millions of dollars going with the taxes? Why isn't anything being produced in a civil way? There's no way we can propose this ordinance out of everything and spend all of our time opposing it when we could be focusing on something better. 2 handouts. Sorry, I get really shaky. So this is the proposal that I had presented at the public comment. This started as a crazy idea to propose a heart tower out of the old BP building. It's there, it's ready to use it. You can change it from an oil empty building to something that the community can really just be proud of. So the heart tower outlines everything, but it also outlines the negatives of the tax levy. And this one shows the winter mobile outreach protection plan. So like,
She can give those to me and she'll make sure we all get copies. Thank you for being here. Did Alan say he wanted?
No, I think he was just here to listen.
Okay. Oh, no, hands up.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, a public comment, and I would just like you to encourage the commission members to keep in mind that, the community development, neighborhood, development is an important component of the commission's work. And that I encourage people to come over to Fairview, East Fairview particularly, check out our, so we just finished off a new community garden that we just built, and it's at 13th and Carluck, northwest corner, and kind of see something that's a positive grassroots type of initiative that we're moving forward with. And then, so that's a summertime thing. And then, we just recently, back in this past winter, we did the Fairview Snow Fighters, pilot project with some ARP grant funds. It was very successful, and it's a way to engage, neighborhood residents and to maintain the sidewalks. Just people who walk have to have clean sidewalks during the winter, right? And it's critically important. And anyway, I just want to keep in mind, it's a summer and winter. We're a unique subarctic metropolitan area with summer and, winter issues and challenges, but we're doing some fun things over in Fairview, and come and see what we're up to. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. I'm excited about gardening. I love community gardens. So cool. Any commissioner comments? I just want to, he's not here to hear it, but thank David for his work putting together that resolution and everyone else for all of your input on making it the best document it could be. I'm excited that we did it. And that it's gonna go as advice, and maybe we will argue our point yet that we're a valuable commission that should exist.
Oh, one.
It's starts with O1. And I don't think we had any reports. I don't think we have any back, so. All right. Technically, I have 8 minutes left if anyone has anything they want to say. Otherwise, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will entertain that motion.
All right. Seconds. Okay. Seeing no opposition, 5:38. Thank you guys.
Before commissioners go anywhere, I just have a couple of like small things that I want to ask.
Yeah.
What time? What works for you? I just want to confirm that everybody's okay with the September training for Robert's rules at the September meeting. I'm still with
What was that date?
It would be, it's just at the regular one. It's the first Wednesday. I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
off the top of my head, but just, and then who all is interested, the third thing. Who all is interested in going to the Parks Commission on August 14th to talk about what we do at HHAND?
No. I'm answering the first question.
Oh, yeah.
I won't be here
Okay.
on the 3rd.
Okay.
That's my birthday. Not be here.
Would we want to try October instead of September? Is that fine? Just to make sure all commissioners are present, or do we want it earlier?
We're talking about August or September?
We're talking about, the original one was September. We could do October instead to make sure everybody's here.
And I'm okay missing. I know Robert rules.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
Honestly, me too. Okay, so we can keep it in
Yeah.
September then. And then who's interested in going to the Parks Commission on August?
Jessica.
Jessica, anybody
Yeah.
else? Okay.
And that was just going as just to witness how they
Yeah,
do things.
witness how they do things, talk a little bit about what HAND Commission does. I met with their staff and they had some curiosity about what we talk about here, particularly because the parks are impacted by stuff that we discussed. Yeah. So
Time is that? Yeah.
it's from 6 to 8 at the
Oh,
Spinard
yeah.
Community
I
Center.
think I'm flying out of town.
Okay,
So I can't be.
that's okay. All right, and then I think that was it. Shanae, I have the thing that I want to talk to you about.
Okay. And I would be interested in going, but I don't know that I can add any input being such a new member on the thing, but I would be interested.
Okay,
But I need the location, date, time.
I'll send that out.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, appreciate it.
It was good. It was very hot. Very hot, like they are going through. And so it was 100 degrees, 50% humidity, like,
It's the one for your daughter, right?
yeah.
I could
She
try.
did enjoy it. By the end of the trip, I will say spending 14 days with your 18-year-old daughter is not the joy that you think it might be. So, yeah, we went to Paris and Italy and Greece. And by the time we were, in Italy, so halfway through Greece, we had 2 bedroom Airbnbs. And we were shutting doors and we were, it was very much like, we need to do something together, but it was great. She is really into history, and so those landscape rides, like it's hiking to the top of the Acropolis and walking through ruins, and I'm like, yep, old rock. Yep, another old rock. And she's like, yeah, but Mom, that's like the temple of Athena. And I was like, yep, rock. Really old rock. Lots of museums,
The guy.
random museums, fancy museums, like,
Oh, that was.
but it was good. Had some really good food. I'm foodie, so I'm always like, oh, where are we going? Where are we going? Yeah.
I feel like every time I travel, I just like, where are we eating next?
Yes,
Exactly.
yeah, and I love like street food, and so I was always like, where are we gonna find, like, where's my food truck? What are we doing?
So I have a question for you. Is the number of families that we're seeing enter homelessness still on the rise?
It is. Right now, I'm aware of
Okay, so either 11 or 12 on shelter families in the next.
So, because I took somebody's
I know.
place.
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
Information.
And it's really
trying to
similar to
decide
this.
whether they wanted to like create a project that's possible. And it was like
And they'll do their.
the data a year ago that it was
In the mayor's
a
office.
broken problem nationally and it
Just
just
like
like
that.
anyway.
So we just submitted,
Okay,
because I was not, the other thing is, what is being HUD was.
Yeah.
And then they waived it out, so we just resubmitted it, everybody.
So that would be literally
Okay.
Dave, and then one of them is family, neon 60 units of family that is probably just, so I'm like for.
I'm crossing my finger. Yeah.
But, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I would really need it. They only be
You were present today, so it's not an excuse absence.
Yeah, that's what I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about the third.
Oh,
I know I'm gonna be here.
Are you gonna do something special for your birthday?
I usually try to,
I love that.
every year.
That's awesome.
So, I'm gonna take a couple
Yeah, by all
of
means,
these.
go for it. I usually just end up recycling the extra copies.
Oh, okay.
However many you would like to take, you are welcome to.
The other thing I was gonna ask Chad, he's gone, you work with his office, right?
Yep, I am the